Thank you very much, Galia. The next topic, the second topic in this panel would be the Gulf state. And Yoel Guzansky is our expert. Yoel Guzansky joined the INSS after coordinating work on the Iranian nuclear challenge at the National Security Council in the Prime Minister's office. He was responsible for coordinating staff work and projects and preparing assessments and making policy recommendations for decision makers. Mr. Guzansky, a graduate of the Hebrew University and Tel Aviv University, is a doctoral candidate in international relations at Haifa University. He published peer-reviewed works in academic journals and commented on international affairs in national and international media. His main topics of research are Middle East regional dynamics and processes, the Arab Spring, Arab states' defense budgets, and especially the Persian Gulf, or the Arab Gulf, sorry, regional perspectives, and of course Iraq. He's been publishing extensively. I don't think any other researchers at INSS is as prolific as Mr. Guzansky, and on issues of the Gulf, only recently published at least 4 papers in the INSS and outside the INSS. Yoel, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Emily, for inviting me and for organizing this very important conference. I'm going to speak about ballistic missile defense, BMD from now on, in the Persian Gulf, if you prefer the Arabian Gulf. By the way, it should be the Persian Gulf. I will address first the threat posed from the Iranian missile arsenal. Second, the GCC strategic vulnerability to asymmetric warfare. Third, the progress made so far in BMD in the Gulf. Fourth, U.S. goals in the near and more distant future. And last but not least, main challenges that lies ahead in BMD in the Gulf. First, the threat. Iran has several military objectives in the Gulf. These include depriving external actors from using the Gulf for offensive means, defending its own coast, its oil refineries and shipping lanes, undermining the influence of the U.S., and make any potential intervention in the Gulf especially costly. Iran has adopted, for many years now, the principle of asymmetric warfare against soft targets, civilian shipping, and infrastructure facilities, many of which populate the Arab coast of the Gulf. And I talk about transport terminals, oil refineries, ports, and especially desalination facilities. This adoption of asymmetric tactics was intended mainly to offset the reliance of the West and the GCC on advanced weapons systems. Iran's main military threat to the GCC states is its superiority in surface-to-surface missiles and additional maritime asymmetric capabilities, which constitute a concrete and immediate threat in the eyes of the GCC states. To date, Iran holds the largest arsenal of ground-to-ground missiles in the Middle East, with most of its missiles have a range of up to 1,000 kilometers, thus threatening mainly the Gulf states. Iran is improving the missiles' accuracy and destructive power and working to shorten their exposure times through increasing reliance on solid fuel engines. Iran's growing missile arsenal has increased anxiety among the GCC states. In a possible military campaign with Iran, either Israeli or American or combined, the GCC urban areas and strategic installation might suffer sustained and potentially crippling missile fire. Iran threatened in the past that it would fire not only at American bases, but also at strategic facilities such as water desalination, oil refineries, and power stations in the Gulf. Many of these installations lie within a short range of the Iranian coast. The objective, according to the Iranians themselves, will be to stun the American missile defense system using dozens, if not hundreds, of missiles that will launch at the same time. A missile attack on oil refineries and production facilities along the Gulf Western Shore could have a more serious impact on global and regional economy than an Iranian attempt to block the Strait of Hormuz. It's that serious. The progress so far. Saudi Arabia and the smaller sheikdoms began purchasing and pursuing BMD capabilities following the Gulf War in 1990, during which Iraq used short-range ballistic missiles against them. The Arab Gulf states have based their BMD capability thus far on the Patriot Advanced Capability, or PAC3, batteries, even though the PAC3 system has shown a very limited ability to intercept surface-to-surface missiles. But since 2006, the GCC states have been purchasing BMD assets in a very rapid pace. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and Qatar especially have begun to upgrade their air defense system to the more advanced Patriot PAC3 configuration. As opposed to the PAC2, the Patriot PAC3 system is specifically designed to counter ballistic missiles. CENTCOM has also deployed Patriot PAC3 batteries in Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, and Kuwait, and stationed warships equipped with the Aegis systems in the Gulf, mainly to defend American bases and assets. The UAE and Qatar have also requested the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, or THAAD. The UAE had been the first to request the system, and in September 2008, the U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency approved the sale, making the UAE making it the first proposed foreign military sale of the system ever. In November 2012, Washington approved a possible sale of additional THAAD system to Qatar and the sale of additional THAAD launchers, missile, and equipment to the UAE. Recently, as May 2013, Oman followed suit and announced a deal for the acquisition of another THAAD system. Saudi Arabia is also considering bolstering its missile defense capability with BME-capable Aegis destroyers and THAAD systems in order to cope better with the Iranian missile threat. Aegis would significantly strengthen the Saudi anti-missile capability, providing additional flexibility over the land-based system. In addition, the Saudi BMD-capable ships in the Gulf would also help the U.S. with its missile defense mission in the region. Before I move on, just a few numbers give you a taste of how significant these arms deals, not just BMD, but all the arms deals in the Gulf in the last few years. The six monarchies' collective defense spending grew by 20% from 2011 to 2012, 20%. From 2008 to 2011, the GCC arms deal totaled more than $75 billion. Nearly 50 billion of that amount consist of weapons for Saudi Arabia, while the Emirates, the second biggest army in the Gulf, which have built up formidable air force and missile strength in the recent years, accounted for 17 billion. U.S. goals and objectives. U.S. officials have said their ultimate goal is a regional missile shield that can be coordinated with U.S. systems. Secretary of State Clinton said in Riyadh at March 2012 GCC-U.S. Strategic Cooperation Forum that it is U.S. priority to help Gulf states build regional missile systems to counter missiles from Iran. In the 2010 Ballistic Missile Defense Review, the American Ballistic Missile Defense Review, it's been said that, quote, the United States will work with allies and partners to strengthen regional deterrence architecture, which must be built on the foundation of strong cooperative relationship and appropriate burden sharing. UN's Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, on a visit to the Gulf last December, said that the U.S. has filled in an era of missile defense capabilities, including ballistic missile defense ships, Patriot batteries, and sophisticated radars to the Gulf. Although the Department of Defense is facing serious budget constraints, the Obama administration is trying to reassure GCC states, saying it will continue to prioritize its commitment to the Gulf, while making sure that its military capabilities evolve to meet the new threats. Progress in missile defense, the administration hopes, will open the door to broader cooperation and border sharing within the GCC. So they hope. Overall, U.S. BMD objectives in the Gulf are, not necessarily in that order. First, to defend U.S. deployed forces in the Gulf. Second, to protect oil infrastructure and strategic installations in the Gulf countries. Third, some may argue that this is the first consideration, to signal U.S. commitment to defend the six monarchies. Fourth, to help deter and in the future maybe contain a nuclear Iran. This is not official, this is my analysis. And fifth, to improve cooperation between the GCC states. What are the challenges ahead? As past experience indicated, this effort might remain hostage to inter-GCC rivalries. Beyond Iran's attempts to drive a wedge between the six, the difficulty of forming a more united security agenda stemmed from the smaller member resistant to Saudi Arabia dominance. Even under an optimal political conditions, the technical challenge to integrate BMD assets among all GCC members are quite substantive. Historic rivalries, disagreement concerning objectives, disputes over command and control have been and continue to be the major point of contention affecting cooperation on BMD in the Arabian Gulf. Some even suggest that BMD can change proliferation decisions, some in the US. Can BMD really help encourage Saudi Arabia not to pursue nuclear weapons? I think the answer is no. I think proliferation decisions like this depend more on broader geopolitical context, on Iranian future nuclear posture, and on the relationship between Riyadh and Washington. In contrast to US efforts in Europe or with NATO, we heard before, the Persian Gulf effort is more ad hoc, mostly behind the scenes, and on a country-by-country basis, with billions of dollars in arms sales negotiation bilaterally between the US and the nations in the region. An effective shield over the Arab Gulf will require partner nations in the Gulf to put aside rivalries, share information, and coordinate their individual arsenals. Some say that, as the threat from Iran grows, it will be easier to achieve cooperation in that regard. Quite the opposite. Some countries can actually get closer to Iran out of fear, bandwagon with Iran, and make cooperation even harder. Thank you.